Yo, I think we should just get right into it because
Yeah.
our time is fast spent now. So we'll just start with Professor Michael Lukodio, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Education at Stellenbosch University. And I can also see we have two people online. Grace Bossier is that the right pronunciation of your name. We also have Egbert online. So we'll take Professor Lukodio's opening, then we follow it with the response from Egbert Bozak. Then we go to Grace, and then Wesley Caesar and Lester September. So Professor Lukodio, you can have the stage, please.
Yes, good afternoon, and yes, we are all sorry for the delay. I want to talk to you about how do we go about bridging the injustices of the past and the promise of a new future in education. Now, I am going to be very short. Social justice means the act of giving back to a person something that was lost or stolen, or paying them money for the loss. Now, it is very difficult for me to ask today, how are we going to pay people some money for what they have lost in education? It is not as if you've lost a piece of land or you have lost your house and now you can add some monetary value to that. So in education, it is much more difficult. But let me give you just one more time an overview, and I'm not even going to mention all those numbers. I mean, I just want to say that the education system in our country is unequal, it's broken, and we've heard that today on more than one occasion. So you see some of the figures there. Let me just give you one. 1,800 schools don't ever have a library, and we are also amazed if our learners cannot read properly.
Yeah.
And then if they can't read, they can't study. So let me move on. So what I'm saying is that the environment is not conducive for education in most of our schools in the country. So how do we give back the education? How much can we pay these communities? For me, throwing money at a problem is not going to solve anything. It's about building bridges. How do you get these kids to school? Because this is education in 2022 in South Africa. And we have to build bridges literally, but also on a higher level to give these children access to education. And you've listened today about giving access to education. Bearing in mind that, restitution is not just a one-off act and then you leave again. But especially in education, it needs to be a continuous process. So what I did is, and yesterday people were saying that we don't do enough. So I've written this article because we got this new legislation that I believe has the potential to eradicate the schooling inequalities. And in this article, I give some form of advice how I think we can do, and where I then say, this is how I see we must interpret and implement this new act for education. I believe this act is at least a starting point for us. I have repeated the article in Afrikaans as well, so that I could reach a wider audience. So, all in all, and I'm almost done with my presentation. After 3 years, our learners at school still drink water out of a tank. After so many deaths in COVID-19, imagine yourself, you were to go to a bathroom and then you are still going to a toilet. How would you feel as a person? And 2,700 schools of our schools are still living with this every single day. Why is it still okay for these kids of Mpumalanga to go to school under a tree in 2022? After 20 years of democracy, why is it okay for only one school in 4 schools to have in our books? I think the overcrowding of schools is a ticking time bomb. And if we don't act and act swiftly, we are going to find ourselves in trouble. How can we expect a learner to study if they don't even have a home? And look at those signs posted there. The one that says sign says go left, The other one says, all right, the one is going forward. So, this woman used these placards to build a house. But these signs for me is typical of where our children in this country find themselves today. They are lost. They don't know which way to go. They are actually lost. And how are we going to solve it? After 12 years, climbing the ladder to grade 12, they fall down in this big hole of unemployment. And then where do you find them? On the corner of the streets with no work. I'm a plumber, I can't do. We must bear in mind, yes, Cape Town is a beautiful city, but Cape Town also has another side. The other side of Cape Town looks like that. And when we deal with education, we must have a new act. Every child needs a place to stay. Every child still has dreams. And we must listen to those dreams because our kids are hungry. And not just for food, for education. So if we don't listen, the learners are going to demonstrate again like they did in 1976. Do we want in 1976 I was in matric. And I promise you, you don't want 1976 all over again. I was a young boy of 16 in matric at 1976. You don't want that again. So adults, we must listen. Stop talking, listen, and do something. And not just one single deed, because if we want to change things, we need to change the lives of our learners and our young people. And only then will we, to conclude, only then will we be able to bridge that gap. Only then when our learners blossom. But then we must start act, and we must start doing that today. I thank you.
Thank you.
That's my 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Can we have you, Edward, please?
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think you say yes.
Now you must help me to take this away. Is it like that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
End of the slideshow.
Yeah, sure, yeah. That should just work. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Oh, shit.
Hi, Egbert. Your audio seems to be muted. Can you just look for a way to unmute yourself? If you can hear me.
Egbert, you are still muted.
Oh, I think we need to unmute him.
Oh, maybe.
Oh,
From here.
Yeah.
That.
So they asked us to keep it on so that they can unmute us. There we
Oh,
go.
I can unmute you. Ta-da. Are you unmuted? No.
not yet.
Maybe I need to unmute.
Jew.
Oh, it's coming.
Just click on that mute thing, that mute button there.
I think you need to
There.
go
Right.
on mute again.
That one there.
And that one's for us. I think you must go on mute again and just give it some time.
Yeah, because it says mute.
Yes.
We don't want to mute him.
Like click on that, then
Okay.
we give it
Step away.
You can try this one.
Unmute. Okay, now I'm stepping away. Oh, I locked him out.
Can you hear us now?
Left voluntarily.
Oh my word, they can't hear us.
Maybe.
let's just
Okay.
wait for one of you.
I would love Egbert. I think Grace can have the stage. Then when Egbert comes back, he would give us his presentation.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So good evening, everybody. My name is Grace from Nairobi, Kenya. However, I'm currently speaking to you from Romania. It's evening. So welcome to the presentation. Let me share my screen. Hope it's able to window. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So My slides are not too detailed as I have not been quite in the best of health. So most of it is in my head. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking on cultural restitution, a continuous journey. Um, when I look at restitution, we're asked to say what restitution means to us. Restitution what's it? refers to compensation that is given to make up for loss, damage, or injury that has been caused. But when I look at restitution in the case of culture and heritage, restitution is a process by which cultural objects are returned to an individual or our community. So I chose to look at restitution from the point of our culture and heritage, which we lost most of it back then during the colonial era, depending on where it came from, but we know where we lost it. And along with that, a lot was lost, and we're still trying to catch up in many different ways, be it family, education. There's a lot we are trying to catch up. And I, as a young person, I might be the youngest person here, but I, as a young person trying to grow up, I'm trying to see how we, as the younger generation, can can try and get this back. So, well, the restitution of African heritage, artifacts, and human remains is one of the vital social justice issues of our times. It is about recognizing centuries of devastation of the African continent and taking a step towards social, historical, and cultural repair for African themselves. So, this is a report by Open Restitution Africa, which we work with at African Digital Heritage, and we're able to see that I think one of the reasons as to why we still suffer a lot of the injustices we do suffer is because we lost our African heritage. And when colonization came in, it's taken a while for us to get that back. And even then, we have not embraced the change that has come with it. So when we look at what are you doing about the harm and what is your call to action in terms of restitution, or who do you want to take action? So at African Digital Heritage where I work, we try to digitize culture and heritage, and I think it perfectly blends with the topic on digitization, that we do try and create digital formats of our culture and heritage. It is easily accessible. It prevents us from losing our culture. It gives there's something tangible. Even though you can't keep track of the physical, of your physical culture and heritage, be it the artifacts, you do have something in storage form. And I think if I read the first point, restitution through digitization at ADH, we aim to create sustainable, engaging digitization solutions that factor in historical legacies, digital infrastructure, and the needs of African collections. Our holistic approach to digitization engages the needs of audiences, questions around technical inequality, and issues around licensing and access to data. Now, one of the reasons why I think digitization is a very, very important part of restitution is because this enables all of us to have a balanced access to information, whatever information it is. However, the challenge is that I think if I echo back to the last presentation, if there's still kids who are learning under trees, when will they be able to get to the digitization part? So that is a challenge that we are having, and it's a challenge that we must think about. I work as a communications consultant, and one of the things that I think would really help us in this restitution theme is communicating well and communicating right, because you see, communication is how the word is passed across. So how do we talk? If you think about culture and heritage, how have you what experiences have you had with it? What have you read about it? So my role myself, I have a passion towards having the right communication, making sure our culture and heritage is communicated in the right way. This enables the world or whoever has access to it through the digitized formats to have the right perception. One Another thing that I think can really do help us is if the governments could be more involved. We have been carrying out a research, if you have read, on the Benin bronzes and everything. And one of the things that I really wished the African governments would do is to really be involved in the in this matter of of cultural restitution. Why? It's because even as we progress as a people, I we have to know where we have come from, and if the governments would really come and have a voice and speak up and help us, just beyond even physical restitution. Physical restitution is us getting our artifacts back, but even just us trying to to have conversations. Just if it would be such a great thing if the governments could actually have more conversations around restitution, whether it's cultural education. It would be great because this would be a topic on people's it would be an emerging topic all around. And I, as a young person, I actually just completed my university last year, and I think it is time for us as young people to actually be actively involved in the worthy cause of our cultural restitution. Why? Because we cannot move forward if we actually had no idea of where we have come from, of our past. And there's been a lot of erasure in the as life keeps going and as the years go by, erasure is there. However, we have access. That's why I think digitization has been such an important part for us at ADH, because now there's people who have access to this information. Access is one of the most important things, and I think if we're able to capture all the other injustices, then I think we will now get to the point of asking each other, now, is access our biggest problem? Because if we're still dealing with education, with people even just not being able to get the basic needs, surely I think they're not able to even think about, access. It's not top of their heads. And doubtless I say it's only by understanding our past that we are able to move forward. Moving on to the next slide, I'm almost done. The impact of erasure has been the pride of the people, which is closely associated with the physical objects, is slowly dimming. I will not go deep into that because that's a whole topic. But however, if you look at cultural restitution and now us trying to get our culture and heritage back and back fully, where the physical restitution is a very important bit of it. And the pride of the people back then, when you do your research and you read about it, some of these objects that we're trying to get back was such a huge part of the community. And if we don't have something tangible to even show to the future generations, then surely I think that will be lost completely. And I think that is not something that we would like to encourage. And the future generations have less tangible evidence of their rich culture, which is true, and lack of proper appreciation of culture. I think, in summary, what one of the things that I'd say is my biggest one thing that I like to think, I want everyone to always factor in, is that we can only appreciate our culture if we are able to bring back those conversations, if we are able to bring back why did our people cherish that so much, and did it work, did it not work? And I think it did work until there was disruption. So I think we ought to get back to that and see, so where did the rain start beating us? And if I move next, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of restitution as a continent. And when now I look at restitution in terms just even beyond cultural restitution, we have lost a lot. Even not just in culture, but even just when you look at sexual abuse, where did all these things come from? We have lost a lot. And I think having conversations, restitution is such a wide topic, and if we can bring back these conversations, I think we will be able to champion a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. If we're I would actually like to think that if we had more of these conversations, especially I try champion them in my youth circles, because I believe the younger people will take over, and if we surely do not have these conversations, then I think it's still going to be the same issue in around 20 years, and I think that's what we're trying to curb right now. As I come to a close of my presentation, um, the work of technology is not just to build futures, but to enable us to radically reimagine, redefine, and restore our African pasts. So, when of did you lose my presentation? Is my presentation still on? Yes. Okay. So the work of technology is not to just build our futures, but to enable us to radically reimagine, redefine, and restore African past. Kindly just forgive me for that. Um, just um,
You also lost,
I'm quite sorry. Um, so as I conclude, I do think that why we do look at digitization.
Um, I think we'll just move on to the next person while Grace is attending to a baby. Hopefully, we'll be able to give her 1 minute to round up a session when she comes back. So, can we have? Okay, she's back. Grace,
Let me
can you
just wrap
quickly
that
sum
up.
up because we are
Yes,
almost
I'm
out
just
of time.
wrapping
We
up.
are out of time,
My
actually.
apologies. Myself and my daughter, we are quite unwell, so it's a bit rough
Oh,
on our end. Yes.
sorry about
So
that.
yes, so as I would just conclude, I think one of the things that we should be able to embrace is technology in restitution. Let's use technology to be able to help us to have more of these conversations, to enable us to store these conversations so that they are not lost, and to be able to do good. And I think as a closing remark, I would now say what restitution means to me. And for me, restitution indicates that there's a second chance. When we say something can be done, for me, restitution means all is not lost. It means that in whatever field you want to talk about in terms of restitution, it means that something can be done and all is not lost. So I think if we keep that in mind, I think we'll be able to have more and more and more of this conversation. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Grace, for that important conversation. And I think I like that perspective of culture from which you've presented, considering what has been happening in the global space recently with the passing on of the Queen and of Queen Elizabeth and the call for the return of all stolen cultural artifacts. So I think that is also a very important conversation to have around restitution, not just in South Africa, but also in Africa as a whole. So we'll quickly move on to the next speaker. Can we have Gabriela, please?
Sure. Should I try and put the presentation on there, do you think? Or is it clear? Okay, I'm going to try and put it on here and now.
oh, you can't.
Yeah, I thought you have. No, I'm just going to have this next to it because it's from my notes.
Oh, at least,
Yeah, but I can't see my notes if I'm on the presenter view. Not that I need notes, I'll skim through it. Nobody panic, I won't. Shit. What else do we do? Where's the share presentation or whatever? Do we
Then
know?
you need to look for screen share, that's that one. That one with, it's the small one, yes. Yes, that one.
Okay, so what we actually need to do is open up the folder. Sorry to close the presentation.
You always want to open at the bottom.
Yeah. I know. I think, am I meant to open it?
Go down. It's already open, it was at the bottom of that screen.
Do you think so?
Now when you do your own, let's go. You were there earlier.
Yeah. Window. No. No.
You were somewhere, yeah.
Okay, what I might just do, because this is, otherwise we're all gonna die here.
Let's not. There is, okay, Dr. Bimbo, are you trying to share?
No, we're trying to share.
Are you trying to share?
I don't need to share from there. It's on the
Okay.
presentation was there.
It's on there, where we now?
I don't know where it was put.
Cool, no worries.
I can do without a presentation, and then everybody has my presentation. Should we just do that?
If you're
I
comfortable with
think,
that, let me go.
well, I think our presentation is coming on now, just now.
Off to the right, there you go.
Of
Go to the
course
right,
it
go
is.
to the right.
This one.
Okay, yeah, that's the guy.
How do we keep thing? Because this is gonna happen again after this.
I'll stay here.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Then I'll sit here and you can scroll, which is fun for you.
No worries.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Gabby. I'll talk a little bit about innovation more generally and how I think it fits in with education and knowledge making, but generally in social impact and empowerment. But I'll skim through. If we can go to the next slide and the next one. So we come from, when we talk about problems, we come from a very particular understanding of what some of the harms are that exist. You'll see on the bottom left, that's a map called Use Explorer that we built and helps demonstrate different statistical data, review data, and all these things on different use indicators. But I think, basically, I'll summarize it. Overall, we have structural inequality, and our structural inequality is historically sourced, but there are consistently modern day policies and laws that entrench that inequality even further. And why is restitution important? Because, for many reasons, not just the moral and ethical foundations of it, but because these impediments and these inequalities are inherited. And, our children experience them. You'll see there's a 49% unemployment rate on the expanded definition of it, unemployment with youth. This map looks at the different statistics on youth not in employment and educational opportunities in EET. And that exists. The bottom, the least percentage of that average is 32%, which is shocking, obviously. But at the same time, we're talking about a lot of these historical inequalities, and we need to contextualize them within modern inequalities that exist as well, and start preparing for, how these inequalities are going to manifest in our futures. And one of the things to bear in mind too, how many of our populations are barely online. When our economy, they often talk about an economy and a digital economy, and increasingly the digital economy is the economy. So when we talk about exclusion from digital systems and digitization, we're talking about real economic exclusion from the main economies that power the global economy. And so that matters. So as an organization, we believe that innovation can be a form of opportunity in this landscape, but in very particular situations. Let me skip to the next slide. So we're an open data organization as well as a civic tech organization. And one of the things about being an open data organization is I think you can't underestimate how important data is for making visible stories, making visible invisible people, and invisible realities. And the foundation of knowledge and information is data. So I think part of a transformative agenda is an understanding of how important data and open data and the relevance of data is, and how central data is to notions of power and the redistribution of power. And I think it's often not appreciated in that way. But same in the innovation space, I think that when you start talking about innovation and knowledge about digital capacities, knowledge about what makes things work, there's a real social justice agenda that should be built around the broader distribution of digital and innovation knowledge amongst communities, given the centrality of digital and digitization. Next slide, please. I think, so there are two components to digitization that I think are often underappreciated. One of them is data, and one of them is not just innovation as building things, but innovation as a way of thinking, and innovation as a way of designing. And there are important things we can take from innovation and design cultures, which can greatly improve our social impact work more generally. And you can just skip that slide. I'll skip this, but this is basically about how I think at the heart of how we think about innovation, within innovation cultures, is the idea of user-centered design and human-centered design. And I don't think we can underestimate how important that is for designing not just technology solutions, but for centering the human being in the design of all our kinds of policy and strategic responses to a lot of the problems that we have. That putting human beings in the center of these things is fundamental. But yes, we can skip. Sorry, I'm trying to make it fast and I don't know. So one of the things that we do is data and digital literacy training. We have a program called Co-Bridge Youth, where we do data and digital literacy training with youth communities throughout the Western Cape. We've got one in Rosh Pino now in Namibia, paid for by a mining company. Very interesting concept. But a lot of, while we use the language of data and technology, it is more fundamentally about civic empowerment. And these youth communities are capacitated not just in the data and digital literacy training, but in broader public participation mechanisms. So they learn how to participate in local government and those kinds of things. What I find is that the language of digital data and innovation is often less intimidating or less combative with government structures. It feels less combative to them than the language of participation and public participation and social empowerment. And so it can be a very useful strategic tool for advancing social change in a community if you come from that perspective. These youth communities have done amazing things. One of our young people became a ward councillor. They've started their own tutorial groups. The point is that the solutions are already in the communities that we want to help. And it's just giving voice to those solutions and some constructive help. I think that's truly transformative. And I think Ian was saying a lot about that this morning. Sometimes working in active citizenship, one of the things that does bother you about it, well, not bothers you, but you feel like it might be too much to ask of people, to also have to, be their own solution to their own problems. But nevertheless, I see it as being effective all the time. And I appreciate how transformative that can be. We can skip to the next slide. I think when we start conceptualizing data, what?
That's my sister.
No, get out.
I can't chill this. And I was writing this down to give to her, and then I saw the questionnaire.
Oh, really? That's amazing. That's very
Wow.
exciting. We're having exciting things happening in this room. So one of the things that I also wanted to think about is it's not just about data and information. It doesn't just matter getting the data. What is also transformative is the creation of the data agenda. What we want to discover, the questions we want to ask, is as much a profound empowerment opportunity, I think, as anything else. You know, we don't just want communities to be extracted from and to be observed. You know, that creating a data agenda as well as a technology agenda and a governance agenda that is driven by those communities is fundamentally important. So one of the projects we did was we worked on just basic data collection skills in communities, and these were some of our youth group members out there doing this kind of data collection and work. And we can go to the last slide, because I want to talk about why it matters. So we work with a community called Wittenberg Justice Coalition. So it's another example where there's a really profoundly active social coalition already there that need very little, you know, and just need the right partners or, you know, more access, just that little bit more. And in their data collection activities, they wanted to do work particularly on health. And so we helped them create the survey tools and the facilities that would allow them to create that data in their communities, and they went up and they've already used it to lobby with the municipality, and it's resulted in 10 extra hospital beds, a new ward for mentally ill patients, a new ambulance, and a new ER doctor. And this is in a community of like 170,000 people. That's incredible. And that's, I think, some of the power of not just creating data, but creating that data collaboratively, utilizing innovation to make those activities more doable and more possible, and then getting out of the way. So yeah, that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. That was very brilliant and stimulating. We have 10 minutes more to the end of the session, so I'll quickly call on the next speaker. Who do we have in the room there? Is that Wesley or Lester?
Wesley.
Okay, please, Wesley, go on with your presentation.
It's also open at the bottom. So.
Yeah. This one?
Good. Okay, thank you everyone. So for me, whenever we speak about matters of transformation, justice, diversity, and restitution, the focus tends to be more on the economic, the financial, political, and political capital. The greater focus is on the tangible rather than the intangible. Notions like cultural and social capital are not made part of the discussions yet. When we get into historically white institutions, it is often these forms of capital that still deprive people of color from their identity, the human dignity, their being, and a quest to find identity. So I would like to argue that historically white institutions often create and maintain environments that enforce an assimilationist perspective that comes at the expense of the identities of people of color. For the purpose of the summit, I'd like to draw on specific themes from my thesis that centers around how students orientate to whiteness at historically white institutions. Thank you. Next slide. Now, although historically white institutions are more racially diverse than in the past, they often remain imbued with white norms and standards that are not conducive to the identity formation of people of color and may even be toxic in that regard. The culture and identity of historically white institutions reproduce discourses of inferiority while fostering whiteness and devaluing otherness, or in the case of my research, coloredness. Slide. As Kim would say. And then you come to a space like this. Next slide. Yeah. And then you come to a space like this, like Stellenbosch University, and you start to realize how different you are. And also, you start to realize how you feel like your people are not celebrated or seen in a more positive light. I've always tried to dim down on how my color identity, I've always tried to dim down on my color identity because it's not approved in these spaces. So I'd like to focus on experiences of colored students in a predominantly white university. And colored students are often required to acculturate in that they need to apply strategies to avoid conflict with the dominant culture. Students feel othered, exposed, alienated, unprotected, especially at social events if they do not look or speak a certain way, a way being white. So institutional culture seems to be premised on the ideal white and the ideal colored, where the ideal colored is the one who acts white. Students may feel pressure to submit to the dominance of whiteness, conform to the expectations to acquire social and cultural capital, but lessen the degree of their coloredness. Slide. Lauren says, I've experienced this pressure to orientate to whiteness a lot of times. Normally when I would speak, I would say J and Joe and so. While others...
Could you try again?
No, Siri. Yay and go. And then I will also speak like that, just to change my accent so that I can fit in with them. Slide. So students believe that we kind of have to play their game by utilizing coping mechanisms or adaptation strategies to enable them to navigate these spaces and situations, meeting white people at their level, doing what they do. Some will change the accent, speak Afrikaans, group together, or just not use colloquial language. Participants with this alter or adapt their basing through what is known as mimicry or cross-cultural code switching, alternating between their own culture and what is considered appropriate within the space and appropriate or policing their behavior in a way and which actually lessens their colored identity. Looking at themselves through the lens of whiteness, trying to adapt and gain acceptance by playing down their colored identity. So, Kimberly notes, there are like small changes in my behavior and like how you conduct yourself. Sometimes maybe you try to speak better English or you try to improve your grammar a bit while speaking. Then I would just change the way I think maybe it would appear more intelligent. So I was aware of like kind of stereotypes and me not wanting to confirm it basically. So what then are the impact or the orientation, the implications of orientating to whiteness as an educational institution? It can be concluded that students orientate by appropriating whiteness through assimilation and alternation for better social experience. However, these practices often leave them feeling othered and lessens their colored identity. Many students thus realize that the pathological pursuit of being white through the accumulation and alternation is unattainable and it actually only causes internal conflict or what some would call a double consciousness. Students thus experience the tension between trying to fit in, this, like the case of Stellenbosch, trying to become a Marty or an IT tiger at UCT, and having to manage what it is to be recognized as a color in that space against the perception of whiteness. So for me, towards institution, with identity formation in mind, I would like to call on a review of institutional culture, particularly the rituals and practices established that are used to establish institutional identity. Social justice in this case would mean reforming institutional culture to informing policies aimed at transformation and inclusion with research like that, like what I did. Similar research should be initiated and used as an indicator to evaluate current practices, norms, standards like events, rituals, groups, songs that form part of a certain culture, which in the case of Stellenbosch is the multiculture or resident culture. What is considered the rites of passage or social event at the university to create a sense of belonging should be sensitive to all social groups that includes elements that celebrate diversity. In closing, when we speak about the loss of land, life, money, possession, it's often easy to speak about restitution because these are more concrete and tangible concepts that can be measured. However, The immeasurable and the intangible, such as dignity, self-worth, sense of belonging, culture, is just as important. It is one thing to allow people into an institution that was not accessible to them historically, but it's a different thing to cultivate a sense of belonging and value for diverse identities within that space. I would like to close what has happened at Stellenbosch University over the past time. This was probably going to happen again. Reason why is because there's a climate, there's a culture that is going to produce people like Tiens Botha again. Henceforth, my approach to restitution is the culture. If we do not address the culture, irrespective of what you're going to do, it's consistently going to produce that. I do not believe, or I do not think necessarily he was racist or that he wants to do it, but there's something within the culture that allowed him to think in 2020 that I might just get away with this. I might just get away with being on someone's laptop, etc., etc. And we need to address that because there are different cultures being created every day, subcultures. And if we do not question what is already existing, we fear, or I fear the challenge of a lot of things that's being perpetuated over and over again. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Wesley, for that very important presentation as well. We have just 2 minutes more, and I would just like to take last words from all of our speakers before we call it a day. Prof, do you have any last words? We have 2 minutes, so you can just wrap up.
Okay. If you take my presentation, the first one, and you take the last one of Leslie, I think one can connect education and culture. If we want to change that culture that Leslie is referring to, we need to educate people. And that education must be sincere, and it must be spot on, and it must be an honest education, recognizing the injustices of the past, but also recognizing that we can move to a new future if we do it all together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. Gabriela, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think for proper transformation as well, that innovation and technology and data will be central, but that there are real things that need to happen in the context of data and technology still, that are conversations that don't happen. And you know what I mean? So it can be a tool, but at the same time needs to have embedded in it, an understanding of a transforming technology itself. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's take Grace before we close the session, because it's 5:30 already. Grace, do you have any parting word for us?
Yes, I do. I'd just say, as I said earlier, restitution means there's a second chance. Restitution means there's something that can be done. So if we take that approach, if we remember that, I think it means that we all have a part to play. And if we all combined everything we've said today and sat and put in measures and policies, it would be a great world to be in. So let's all remember that restitution means there's another chance and something can be done. And lastly, let us appreciate, let us embrace one another, and this enables us to be able to successfully get through whatever it is we're trying to restitute. So yes, thank you, and apologies for the disruption. Yeah.
It's all right. So thank you so much, everyone. This is where we'll be drawing the curtain on this panel session. I appreciate all of your brilliant presentation. Thank you.
Thanks,
And see you all some other time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Sure, we are our humans office.